Today's speaker is Amy Boyle, an internationally published photographer and passionate visual storyteller. She graduated from Northwestern University with a focus on business and art history. Her love for imagery has drawn from her work with multiple large organizations in Chicago and around the world, such as Fortune magazine, the Washington Post, the New York Times, Broadway in Chicago, Variety, Playbill, among others. Amy has been with several female empowerment focus groups, such as Women on Fire, as well as serving with the Oprah magazine, as a brand ambassador for the last 4 years. Along with her husband, Amy has proudly raised 4 sons in Chicago. 3 of the 4 are here. Along with her husband, they may or may not want to identify themselves. So with that, I'm going to give you Amy Boyle, and as we normally do, we'll have questions after her presentation and a brief musical interlude. So welcome, Amy Boyle.
Hi there. Woo, goodness. All right. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm very excited to share my project with all of you, which is 52 Phenomenal Women. Let me get you to that slide here. Nope, hold on. There we go. I've been a professional photographer since 2005 and have always had a camera in my hand ever since I was in junior high. Being the one that people would look to capture all of life's events, from the mundane to the ridiculous to the, I'm so glad we had that because we lost so-and-so later in life, looking back on that sort of thing now. In my body of work, as Katie told you so well here, that's me, hello. Let's see here. Includes theater, portraiture, and events. So I've had the great fortune, as of recent, to cover the national tour, the 5th anniversary of the 20th anniversary, follow that, of Rent, because why say 25 when you could say the 5th of the 20th? But anyway, so that was a really fun thing that I got the opportunity to do. And then also the Timeline Theater in Chicago, working with the actors but also the production crew to create an element to make sure that the imagery conveyed that the fact that these folks, they only do period historical works. And it's 2019 when I shot this, but they wanted it to look like 1900s, and perhaps they were being warmed by the glow of a glass burning furnace. So they were glass blowers. So some kind of fun things, and obviously your traditional headshots, but not so traditional, taking them outside in an environmental setting. And then going back to more theater, we have up there, I cover a lot of Broadway openings in Chicago. We're lucky enough to have a lot of premieres that happen here. And Margaritaville with Jimmy Buffett opened, and they said, please come and shoot that. And they're like, by the way, there's going to be a special guest, just be ready. Often with my line of work, a lot of that just be ready is there. And I'm like, okay, what's it going to be? And wouldn't you know, they sing an encore of Margaritaville, and screaming salt, 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 rapping is Lin-Manuel Miranda. So you're just like, you never know what's going to happen. But then sometimes you do, and you have one of your heroes or heroines up there, and it's Gloria Steinem, and you have the opportunity to be a part of history, to mark history, and to capture that with my lens. So that's a little bit of back about where I've been and what I've done. And as Katie also mentioned, I do have, there's my husband, Jeff, and my 4 sons, Drew, Colin, Edward, and Jeffrey, and 3 of them are here today. And it's Colin's 22nd birthday, by the way. Flew in all the way from Argentina this morning just to be here. But he also goes to Northwestern, so we're nice and close. So anyway, like many of us here, or all of us actually, we have different roles, right? I might be, and I am, a daughter, a wife, a sister, a mother, a friend, an entrepreneur, and the list goes on and on. But none of those roles inherently define us as one thing. You can be all of that, and because we are all of that, we have so much more to offer. So that's when the impetus of the idea of this project came to me. 52 Phenomenal Women. I am lucky enough to have a platform with my blog and website and social media that if I were to feature someone each week, we could maybe make an impact, So I have all these men in my household, even our pets, our cats are boys. So I try to balance that with my women's groups, like the Women on Fire, and being a part of living my best life as brand ambassador for the Oprah magazine, and that sort of thing. And with that, I feel charged to share the ability to lift others, right? The rising tide. So the project really, when I think back, honestly, probably the seed was planted at this event. Many of you might have been there. It was the Women's March in Chicago in 2017. What was projected to be 60,000 women strong, and people actually, 60,000 strong, ended up being almost 250,000. That energy, that vibe, that power, that positivity stuck, and has continued to stick. I wasn't really sure at that time, where that was leading for me, but I just knew I needed to do something. I wanted to do more for my fellow sisters, and I had to think on it for what that would be. So, as time would have it, I had another birthday, and they make you make wishes. I can't believe they make you do that. But as I did, I thought, well, what are my strengths? Where can I share? This wish isn't for me. My wish for my birthday turned into this project, which was to shine the light on other people's stories that might be ordinary, potentially mundane, but are very impactful to the people who have them and people who needed them to be shared. So I encourage others to be a part of it, because alone we can do so little, and together we can do so much. The idea of the project was to have a dialogue of inclusion, support, and recognition for the phenomenal qualities that are within all of us. And there was no better time than now to start it. When you pair a project like this, it's great to just tell stories, but isn't it better if we can work with a group that already is doing good for others? And I had the opportunity to meet the director of Dress for Success in Chicago, Wendy Wilkins. And from the moment I met this woman, I knew I needed to be a part of what good she was doing for women in general. The mission of Dress for Success is to empower women to achieve economic independence by providing a network of support, professional attire, and development tools for women to thrive in work and in life. It was founded in 1997 and has chapters in over 160 cities and 28 countries, empowering over 1 million women each year to fulfill their career and life goals. This is Wendy. All right. So like I said, I am a 4-year brand ambassador with the Oprah magazine, and I was formally introduced to Dress for Success because one of their marketing initiatives with the magazine was to pair Oprah magazine and Talbot's professional clothing to make a fashion capsule or a collection for the last 6 years, where 30% of the net proceeds goes back to help Dress for Success. Some of the stories of the people that they've featured, whether they be coming up, I think we have Maria Shriver being one of the phenomenal people that they're going to work with in this group, but everything from, Angela Manuel Davis to people who are already making a difference in their own communities but taking this initiative personally. All right. But beyond the idea of the project, each person who participates, I ask them to make a donation to Dress for Success. I am not collecting anything to do. I'm donating my time and my talent to capture these stories, to promote these stories. But when they make a donation, we are now helping the Chicago chapter, and we have raised over $6,000 to date in just 73 weeks into the project. What I wanted the project to have beyond the sharing of stories was to have an element of positivity. It's so often you can turn on your Facebook, you can turn on the news, and it's negative or stress or this or lack and all these things. And wouldn't it be nice if you knew on Wednesdays you'd have one little nugget of good news, one little nugget of someone overcoming something, someone sharing something personable, so you know that you aren't alone and you have people who care and have your back. So what makes a phenomenal woman now? And the whole idea is, when I would ask people, do you want to be a part of this? And I'm not phenomenal. You must have other stories to tell. Why would you tell mine? And I said, because. And they look at me and they're like waiting for something. I'm like, it is when you take the time to find right now, not yesterday, not tomorrow, not 5 years from now, what are you, the why you do what you do and the what you do. It all becomes clear. You can go, oh gosh, that little thing, I thought that was so small, and it has a very big impact. Another component of the project is to add to my creativity. As a photographer, sometimes you can think, you just go out and shoot the same things, and every time I meet somebody new, I'm in a whole new sandbox, a whole new color of crayons. Everything I get to do, I get to like draw outside the lines and come up with this. And so, for instance, here, this good friend of mine, her whole idea of her story was more is more. And I'm like, how are we going to do this? How are we going to explain more is more? She loves to bake, and she's like, come on upstairs. And she starts sprinkling powdered sugar all over it. And she's like, here, have a glass of wine. Let's do this. And then she goes, and blows the powdered sugar everywhere. And I'm like, and more is more of a mess, but we're having a great time doing it. It was tremendous. And the fact that, we had this, it didn't matter. It was fun, it was joyful, it was now, and it was her strength. She always finds humor, she builds community, and we will never forget this moment. But initially, in starting to find, where do you begin a project like this? So thankfully, I had Wendy at Dress for Success, and she introduced me to Erlene. And Erlene is a graduate of the Dress for Success program. And the moment I sat down with her, she just oozed and bubbled with authenticity and excitement and positivity. And then as she told me her story through tears and laughter, I'm feverishly writing things down and I'm recording it. I was just so in awe, and I couldn't have been happier to start with someone who had such a compelling story that through many obstacles was able to make lemonade out of lemons, right? She just kept going. But what I found in that is I really didn't like the interview process. I started to think about this, and I'm like, okay, so I can interview you, but then we're only asking certain questions, and it may not be getting to the nugget of what's really important. So I asked a couple of the people that were coming up that I was going to feature, I said, we'll make this easy. I'll give you 230 words in one format and 500 words in another. I said, do you think you could tell me in your words what you want to share? And all of a sudden, it became a cathartic exercise. People started to really ponder and own and be proud of what they were saying, yes, raising my hand, I am phenomenal. Who would have thought? In her words. So I often say, the camera is an extension of my heart and my eyes, but honestly, you don't get a good picture unless you're listening. So many people, especially in this project, because they're not professional actors or they're not media people per se, you really have to spend the time to get to know them, to understand them, and so that they feel comfortable, so that the story that my photos want to tell lines up with the story that they're telling. And it's not, as many of us are, including myself, I'm not usually behind the podium, I'm behind my camera. It takes some time to have that know, like, and trust so that you're getting the best out of everybody that you're featuring. So we spend a lot of time, we listen, we go for walks, and then all of a sudden we're walking through a playground and you're like, you know what? Joy comes to me when I'm on a swing and age doesn't matter. And I'm absolutely. And there you go. And that's the shot. That's what we went for. So again, going back to the lens, my camera, my heart, I always lead with empathy and compassion and spend the time with my subjects so that that is conveyed. But honestly, each person that's in front of my lens is brave. They're brave enough to be seen, brave enough to be heard, brave enough to be bold in sharing their phenomenalness, and I think that's a word, or I'm going to coin it today. And yes, it's okay to own that. And brave enough to be a champion for other women. So this is a photo of the group that was able to congregate to celebrate our year one. So we finished 52 weeks. And we'd often lived on, we have a private Facebook group for our features. And everyone's very active, sharing stories and building each other up. But not that many, I have features in year one, 10 different states, ages 21 to 83. So various groups, but they hadn't been together. Maybe 2 people knew each other because organically I started with Erlene, and then someone would introduce themselves and say, how about this person? And then the spider web of where the project went was something I could not predict, and I still can't predict, and it's part of the amazing part of this ride. But a group, Levenfeld Pearlstein in Chicago, came to me and said, we heard about your project. I'm like, how are you hearing about the project? Well, again, you tell 2 friends and so on and so on, and all of a sudden they wanted to host a party to celebrate. And it couldn't have been more amazing, because what happens is you get everybody together. And now it doesn't just live online. It lives in the connections, in the smiles, in the hugs of strangers, people who didn't know each other, people who read a story, and then because everyone had a name tag with their featured photo and what week they were in, they would go up and give them the atta girls and the, oh my gosh, I can't believe you overcame that, or you did this, you're so brave, you're so awesome. And then it was supposed to be a 2-hour party. I think it went on for 5. I think it would have lasted a lot longer. So that's what happens when you make the time to make it all come together live and in person. And the topic of this talk was really like how to build community. Well, I didn't necessarily start the project going with that in mind. It was an individual. I'm going to tell this story, I'm going to tell this story. And then it turned into a community that I am so proud to be the caretaker of, and couldn't be more thrilled to see where it is going. And as we go into now into year 2, almost year 2.5, what I'm finding is what I think, because I get stuck in the quagmire of the organics, I got to find the person, shoot the story. It means more than that. So I have 4 phenoms that wanted to share their opinion, because I need to get this off me for a second. I want you to. So meet Alessandra.
Hello, my name is Alessandra Chiarelli, and I'm Phenomenal Woman number 13. I am originally from Brazil, and I live in St. Paul, Minnesota now. I came to learn about the project through Amy Boyle, because we're part of a wonderful network of women called Women on Fire. I knew Amy was a tremendous photographer. The cause was really meaningful to me, to help other women through Dress for Success. And I dared myself to be vulnerable and tell a story that was very personal, and I hoped that it could help others as my journey helped myself. Learning about mindfulness and how it is a tool to improve my well-being and be the best person that I can be. When the story was shared in social media, I shared it with several personal friends and professional friends, and the reactions I got were pretty exciting. It was so scary to put myself out there, and what people told me is that they learned a lot through my story, and it really helped them, and it meant a lot to me. And that story was told about over a year ago, And once in a while, I still have an opportunity to share it with people, to explain about my journey with mindfulness, and they read it and they continue to say that it's so helpful to them. So I thank Amy for the platform. It was an incredible experience, and I love reading the stories of other women. Thank you, Amy.
And there's 3 others. They're fairly short. I want you to meet Kara as well.
Hi. I just want to thank Amy for providing the community of phenomenal women. All the women who I get firsthand knowledge about through her blog are phenomenal. They're very interesting. They're doing different things, and it just makes you feel kind of like you're in a special group of women who can collaborate and connect on both a professional and a personal level. So that's terrific. And I also think that the actual act of coming up with writing the blog and thinking about how you got where you are is a very great exercise in self-study and self-awareness. It's a little uncomfortable to think that you're phenomenal, but Amy provides the space for you to see both in writing and then in the imagery how what you do is important and why you do what you do and how you got there. And so I can't thank her enough for creating the community. Thank you, Amy. You are phenomenal.
And then I gotta love, our next one is gonna be Susan. And when I met her, I met her at the Women's March that first day. And what we did after that is we've had this friendship. She moved to California. I wasn't really sure we were gonna see each other that often. I mean, I'm out there a couple times a year, but she called me a year ago, December, and said, I'm gonna go to San Francisco to run in SantaCon, in the 5K Santa run. I want to be a part of your project. You want to meet me out there, and we could do that. So her whole premise is life is not a dress rehearsal. Make the most of it, and I think her video will explain that even further. Oops, that's Kara again. Hold on. And at least we have the sunshine today. So normally when I put that in the presentation earlier this week, I'm like, gosh, it's just going to make us all wish we were in the warmth. And I'm like, well, it'll warm me up. But then I look outside and we have our own version of that. Lake Michigan's almost that warm, right? And then our last one that I'm going to feature is Tiffany. And my son Colin was in an Uber and met this woman. He's also a photojournalist. They had a great conversation, and he called me up, or one of the many myriads of texts probably, and said, you have to meet this woman. She is phenomenal. And we exchanged emails, and what I didn't know was, at the time, I just knew that she wanted to get into media herself, worked for her church, and does their audio, visual, and presentations and things. But what came out of this was a more personal story that she needed to share.
Hi, Amy. Being a part of the 52 Phenomenal Women Project, having my testimony published and becoming a phenomenal woman has really blessed me beyond measure. To me, my testimony that I have shared with so many people has gone from just being words to being validated to share my testimony. And when you published my article, it was as if my testimony got off the ground, it got wings, and now it's flying, it's free. And the fact that, to me, my testimony means so much to myself, I feel like now that it's been published, it can now help so many others. And it's no longer just a story that I'm telling, but it's a story that's helping somebody to see that if I can be delivered from depression, then anybody else can as well. And so being a part of the 52 Phenomenal Women, making me feel like I accomplished something because I shared what I've been through, it means more than words could explain. And I just want to say thank you.
So I think you get the gist of what, in just 4 out of now 74 women, what this project, what taking the time to listen, to document, but to share. Because we are all storytellers with stories to tell. And you might tell it in person to the person at the post office, you might tell it on social media, but you have the opportunity to raise somebody up every day by being a listener and also being vulnerable and sharing your story. Capturing light is what I do as a photographer, but you are also a storyteller. All these women, this is year 1, all in one. The captured light of these 52 is now shared, and shining the light of each woman's story is helping her light the candle of the woman next to her, letting everyone know that they are no longer alone in the dark. So, my favorite t-shirt, use your power to empower. How are you going to empower the folks next to you? That's my charge. You can start by joining the 52 Phenomenal community. Every posts go live every Wednesday. Right now I'm working, this will be week 75 on Wednesday. We're going for sure to 104 weeks, and beyond that, who knows? But maybe we'll continue on from there, and there'll be other chapters in other cities. So thank you very much.
Thank you. It was very enjoyable.
Okay.
I'm curious to know what kind of funding the project gets. How many are involved in funding your work?
Well, that is a great question to start with. Honestly, it has really been a very organic, small movement for the funding. Everything that it takes to do the shoots has been donated by me. So that means driving locations, flying to different places. I had one opportunity where someone said I wanted, Alessandra in particular, had me go to Minneapolis to photograph 5 women that she wanted to do. So I was asked to go there, and they sent me there. But honestly, everything on the funding side has been from me, with the donations going directly to Dress for Success. But I would like to make that change. So I'm looking to expand. I do have a Patreon account to help cover like the incidentals of keeping the website running and all that sort of thing. But at this point, it's been very near and dear, and we're waiting to expand.
I want to ask a question real quick.
Mm-hmm.
I flashed while I was watching your talk and the images. I think it's like the Humans of New York.
Yeah.
And there's other phenomenon like this. Mm-hmm. And I'm just curious if you have, like, I don't know if you feel like you're similar or different to what he's been doing with Humans of New York, or why are these things happening now? Like, what do they tell us about where we are and the things we need versus new opportunities to connect?
Well, when I first was trying to describe the project, I would call it Humans of New York meets Women Crush Wednesday. So if anybody follows like Instagram, there's a hashtag out there. Like you want to talk about some awesome woman in your life, there's Man Crush Monday. There's all sorts of ridiculous things out there, not necessarily being like the crush of that kind of crush, but someone that you admire, right? So the idea of the Humans of New York thing, what I think is so important is there are so many stories to share. And they are in the everyday, and we tend to potentially overlook them. But we can share them in little nuggets, whether it's our 7 seconds of consuming Instagram or more like 2 hours or whatever, or Facebook. It's just a nice way to get more of these stories out to the general public. So I'm honored if it even comes close to be considered part of Humans of New York, because those stories and taking the time to get to know the people is very important, and that's what I've been trying to do as well.
How do people find out about Dress for Success, and do they have like an outreach program to let people know?
Sure. Each chapter does their own marketing. Our Chicago chapter is the third largest outside of Los Angeles and New York. So they have a great, being with their different grantors and people that donate to them, they get word out. They have 2 main events every year. One's called Women, Wine, and Wardrobe, and the other one is just their annual Dress for Success breakfast, where people, graduates of the program, get up and speak, funding from radio stations and whatnot. So they do a really good job on the marketing department in Chicago. We're very lucky.
Over here.
Mm-hmm.
Being a woman and struggling with self-esteem, like most of the women I know, I think possibly do from time to time. If this were the 52 Phenomenal Men Project, I'm wondering if men would be saying, "Oh, am I phenomenal?" I just wonder. I love that it's getting women to embrace that. Can you speak to that idea and how people respond to the word phenomenal? Please?
Yeah, well, I actually had, when I was on Jen Weigel's radio show recently, she had brought that up as well. Why not 52 phenomenal men? And then she cut herself off and said, because they've had their time to do, they've been phenomenal. You get to grow up, you are phenomenal, right? In your reading, you said that women are caretakers and this and that and all these things that are smaller in a box. So it's 2020 and we have to raise our hand and say I am, and you have to coax it out of people every darn day. I'm like, please tell me something that you can look in the mirror and go, I own, I love, I am. And so, it's not men versus women. It's the story that I want to share with the platform and the opportunity that I have to do it with all that I am. And I am lucky. I have my fabulous mother, but all the men in my life have never stopped me from opening my mouth and leading with my heart and not really thinking about anything else. And so that's why this project is 52 Phenomenal Women for me.
Hi, thanks so much for your talk. There's part of me that loves the story of basically finding Tiffany through a chance Uber ride. I'm wondering if you have any other stories of just these fantastical ways of you meeting these phenomenal women.
Oh my gosh, yes. Good. I need a visual just so I can find them out. Oh my goodness. Well, this woman up here, Marcia, is a Pilates instructor. At the time, I now take Pilates. I didn't take it before, and I don't take it with
Can you use your...
Oh, of course. Marcia is a Pilates instructor. I met her through a friend of a friend who said, you need to know this woman because what she does is postpartum Pilates. And her whole reason for helping women get in shape after having children was about treating the whole woman, feeling good about yourself in your skin that you're in, and that kind of thing. It's in the news every day, or should be in the news more, but why we're not addressing certain things. And here was someone who, on a chance encounter, I got to find out her why. And her why is so impactful, and the people that she helps are now sharing that good vibe with their families and their friends and their girlfriends, and that ripple effect keeps going. So, every single person that's come to me has been from I would say maybe 10% are people that I know really well, and I've leaned on them hard. In fact, my good friend Debbie's in the audience, and she's been such a cheerleader in one of my stories. But what is amazing is when it just, there's someone coming up for year 2 who I was at Time Out Chicago Market, and she was talking about wanting to win. She was a bartender, and she wants to win the craft cocktail contest. And she was like, I've got it. And she was sitting there and dreaming up all these ideas. And wow. And her why was that she didn't want to be a flight attendant anymore. She wanted to be with people directly and be an artist every day. And her artistry is through craft cocktails. Who knew, right? I mean, there's so many cool things.
I think I gathered that basically the women you selected or invited had achieved something special or important, either personally or professionally. And you mentioned a few of them, like Dress for Success. Could you give us more examples of what made these women phenomenal, specifically?
Sure. Kind of going back to the premise that just kind of giving a platform so that we can celebrate the smallest things to the biggest things. But I try very hard, and I will coach anybody who sends me rhetoric that it is too much of a resume, because I'd rather know more of the personal story. How they come to me, again, it started with, I had the recommendation for Erlene, who was a graduate of the Dress for Success program, but then it's just started to splinter. And sometimes, based on, quite honestly, not knowing where this was going, it's Tuesday, the posts go live on Wednesday, I need to go meet somebody. And it forces me to get out of my zone and find a story and find someone who's willing to be photographed today, write words today, so we can go live tomorrow. As it grows too, what I'm finding that's very cool is the word of mouth is sharing it. And now I'm having people nominate their friend, people I never know. I have people come to me from LinkedIn. I have people email me because they read it on the blog. They're like, when are you coming to Canada? I'm like, send me there, I'll come. I know there's phenomenals everywhere. I mean, it's not, hopefully it doesn't seem elitist, it should seem inclusive, and I hope everyone wants to find that story with the people that they're with every day.
One more question.
So you talk about finding the phenomenal women is sort of an organic process.
Mm-hmm.
What about getting all of this out there? What are your platforms? Has that grown? Has that evolved?
Sure. Well, it started, so it lives in 3 places. It lives on my blog, and it lives on Instagram and Twitter. Facebook too, but I'm trying to use Facebook less, but it seems to be where everyone tends to go. So with the blog, I mean, honestly, my readership when I started the project was maybe 500 people a year. And as of year 2, because once you feature somebody and then they share it on their platform or they put it on their LinkedIn or whatever, last year alone I went from 500 readers to almost 20,000. So that's still not a lot when you look at, someone reading the Tribune or the Sun-Times or whatnot. But from 500 to that I'm seeing growth, and that's the power of social media, that you can share it so easily. And that's how the stories are shared right now. I am leaning towards, at the completion of year 2, to have a book, though. But I would like to.
One more question here.
How did you select the number 52?
Well, 52 weeks in a year, right? So one a week. I figured that way I had something new every week. A life of a photographer is very cyclical. It's like you're busy, 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 then you're not busy. You're busy, busy, and then things flatten out. And this was a really good way to keep myself constantly busy for the whole year, but also not take away from any of the other projects I might be doing, so that I could give it my all without going too deep. So, and 52 is just a fun round number. I like it a lot.
As a professional photographer, is there a female photographer who's inspired you?
Oh my goodness, yes, so
Or
many.
I guess narrow it down, like who's the number one?
Who's number one? Well, so in portraiture, of course, it's Annie Leibovitz. I mean, her ability from her days with Rolling Stone magazine to Vanity Fair, I mean, just how her photography has changed over time, how intimate and personal she got with her vulnerability, sharing her stories and her photography of her and Susan. Top notch. And also like being able to play, again, talking about like all the crayons, all the lenses, all the fabric, like to set up a shoot is fantastical, but as simple as she does is amazing. And then in the world of theater, it would be Joan Marcus, because there really aren't that many women theater photographers out there, and she's killing it week after week for many, many years.
I think that was it. Thank you so much, Amy.
Thank you.